Hi everyone, good afternoon. I'm Kanish Goratila, Program Manager at Startup Rezo. It gives me a great pleasure in hosting you all at the inaugural edition of the next Corporate Innovation and Venturing Summit. We have had a great response from the ecosystem and we look forward to an amazing 2 days here at the summit. I would like to take a moment and acknowledge GitHub to be our sponsor partner for the summit. Corporates, they can be proverbial gorillas, big, mighty, and not so agile is what we would think. But you will hear from one of our keynote speakers, gorillas can dance. The next Corporate Innovation and Venturing Summit is all about keeping corporations at the core and recognizing them and the leaders running the initiatives actively, and building a platform for enabling dialogues with our key stakeholders of the startup ecosystem. We have a packed agenda lined up for you, in addition to hearing from industry leaders on the areas of innovation, digital transformation, startup engagements, and more. We will also be hosting corporate reverse pitches, and we also have our partners and startups exhibiting at the event. So, without further ado, I would like to invite on screen for our opening keynote for the day, Simon Spears, Corporate Director at Elmarks. Over to you, Simon.
Great. Thank you very much, Kanish. It's great to be here, and thank you for the invitation to speak with you all today. So good afternoon. My name's Simon Spear. I'm the Commercial Director at Elmarks. For those of you who don't know Elmarks, we are specialists in corporate innovation. We've helped clients around the world and across geographies with both innovation strategy and implementation. You can see some of our clients here on the screen, and we work with them to design and deliver a variety of innovation activities that support them with both internal and open innovation, as well as with venture studio activity. In total, we've run over 70 bespoke innovation programs, and I'll shortly talk you through some of the models that we've adopted. But before I do that, I want to talk through some of the potential models for next generation corporates that we utilize. I just want to spend a little bit of time outlining why it can no longer be business as usual, and how the pace of change has forced the modern corporation to think about new models of innovation. To do that, I'd like to take a journey back in time, and I'd like to talk about the transformational activity that took place on the 17th of December 1903. Now, many of you won't necessarily know that date, but you will have heard of the story of two brothers named Wilbur and Orville Wright, who took to the skies in their plane Kitty Hawk for the first recorded flight in history. Actually, as it happens, they took to the skies 4 times that day. It's estimated that human civilization as we know it has existed for around 6,000 years. From that starting point, it took us approximately 5,900 years to leave the ground and fly. However, following that initial Wright brothers flight, it took us only another 60 years to leave the planet entirely. 6 years later, we'd landed on the moon, and after that, took only a further 60 years until we'd managed to achieve powered flight on a completely new planet, 140 miles away from our own. I suspect had you told the Wright brothers back in 1903 that we as a species would accomplish so much in such a short space of time, no doubt they wouldn't have believed it. But the reality is that these achievements aren't actually that surprising. Much of the progress we've seen since the Wright brothers took to the skies has been possible due to the extraordinary and unforeseen advances in computing power. That extraordinary advancement was best summarized in 1965 by Gordon Moore in the first iteration of his now famous prediction, Moore's Law. Moore, seen here on the right of this picture, was then the director for R&D for Fairchild Semiconductors. He'd later go on to become president of Intel. Moore believed that the number of transistors on integrated circuits would double every 2 years, and this would allow, among other things, for faster and more powerful computers and a growing rate of advancement in computer technology. As we all now know, Moore's law proved very accurate, not only forecasting the increase in speed and power of computing, but also providing a description for the trends in technological advancements more generally. And we can see this everywhere, from hard drive storage to DNA sequencing. Indeed, for a demonstration of Moore's law in action, you need to look no further than your phone. If you're lucky enough to own a new iPhone, you'll have access to over 150,000 times the processing power and 1.5 million times the RAM than the guidance computer that landed Apollo 11 on the moon. That's remarkable enough by itself, but arguably more remarkable is to consider that nearly half of the world is estimated to own a smartphone of some sort. So in addition to more powerful tech in our pockets, progress has commercialized and crucially democratized personal computing to a level where access to top-end technology is higher than it has ever been. And this has led to the increase of ideas that previously would not have had a platform. On the back of these advancements, the tech startup scene has thrived. There are literally thousands of tech startups founded every month, all with innovative ideas and a unique offering or skill set. And alongside the growth of new technologies, the ease of communication enabled by the internet and smartphones has made the sharing of ideas and information easier than it's ever been. New ideas can grow multinationally and benefit from a diversity of experience, culture, and capabilities. And this really brings us to the heart of the issue in my presentation today. This exponential growth in new technology brings with it significant challenges to traditional corporates. Corporations are in an uphill battle to ensure that they're able to keep pace. And you can see here on this slide that only 52 companies who were in the Fortune 500 in 1955 remain on there. That's just over 10%. The very existence of some corporates is under threat. And if you don't believe me, ask the likes of Blockbuster, Kodak, BlackBerry, and many others. Corporate innovation has never been so important, and that's why it's vital that corporates get their innovation strategy right. But it's hard. Getting your innovation strategy right is hard, and you can see some of the stats here. 70 to 90% of new products fail every year. Only 40% of developed products make it to market, and of that 40%, just over half will actually generate any revenue. And perhaps the killer stat here at the bottom, 6% of executives are actually satisfied with their innovation performance. So against those stats, how do you start to design an innovation strategy that is appropriate for the challenges of today and those of tomorrow? Essentially, where do you start? Should you rely on utilizing your internal talent to drive new innovation? And should that happen at a senior level or from those employees on the front line? Do you want to build the business yourself, or do you want someone else to build it for you? Or do you want to look to partner with startups and scale-ups who already have solutions that you can look to adapt and develop? Do you want to buy those solutions as a product or service? Or do you want to buy those companies outright? And I guess more deeply, where does responsibility for innovation sit within your organization? Well, the answer is, as always, it depends. Fundamentally, you need to look at what are the objectives that you're trying to achieve, and how does your innovation strategy link to your core business strategy? Unfortunately, I only have 15 minutes for my presentation, so I can't get into this as deeply as I would like to. But I do want to spend the remainder of my time talking through potential models to address these questions. On this slide, I've picked out 4 of the most popular common models for corporate innovation. In the top left, we have an open innovation lab, which is designed to discover, develop, and ultimately deploy external startups or scale-ups into a corporate business through a fast-paced 10-week collaboration process. The premise is to bring external innovation to drive new revenue streams, help create efficiencies and save money, and ultimately future-proof your business. On the top right, you have sprints, or as we call them, a fusion. And the idea of a fusion is really to bring together the right internal stakeholders and, where appropriate, external partners to solve core business challenges and accelerate solutions over a short period of time, usually solving challenges that take months or even years in less than a week. On the bottom left, you have the Entrepreneurship Model, as we call it, the Intra Lab, which is all about focusing on equipping and empowering a corporate's employees with the tools to come up with ideas, drive those ideas through to proof of concept, and ultimately aims to roll those ideas out into functioning business units within the corporate. And finally, there's the Venture Studio, which builds out new business units externally when the corporate doesn't have the capability to do it internally, or more interestingly, when what they're trying to build is so antithetical to their core business that to build it internally risks not only the prospects of the new venture, but also the corporate's core business itself. So as an example on this, as a side note, does anyone know who the first company was to develop the digital camera? This is obviously a rhetorical question, but the answer is Kodak. But they ended up killing it because they didn't want to destroy their film business. And we all obviously know what happened to them in the end. So the idea behind the Venture Studio is it allows you to take the necessary risks, but to do it either in a safe way and or detached way. So these are examples of the 4 most common models that we see when it comes to corporate innovation. And so with the remaining time, I'm going to quickly dive into these in more detail and give a high-level overview of how we approach these with our clients. It's worth saying that whilst each of these models has a detailed framework and methodology, they're all adapted to the intricacies of our client and the industries that they operate in. So let's start with the Open Innovation Lab. And as you can see, this is all about creating the framework for collaboration over 10 weeks to test and embed new technologies into the business operations and essentially drive business growth. And we do this through a 6-stage process that we adapt for our clients. I'm going to rush through this very quickly, but hopefully it'll give you a good idea as to the process. Everything we do is client-led, and it starts with stage 1, category identification, where we work to identify the 3 to 5 themes that we are looking to address by having conversations across the business and bringing in external insights to assess which innovation may have the most impact. We then use this to form a scouting brief. And we use this scouting brief to discover the startups and scale-ups that can provide solutions to the opportunity and challenge statements identified in stage 1. On average, we uncover over 10,000 startups a year from over 80 countries against these scouting briefs. And we use a platform that we developed internally called The Bridge to manage and screen the applications and present the most appropriate solutions back to the client for their consideration. So it's usually around 40 or 50 or so out of hundreds of applications, and those startups are then evaluated, and the top 20 or so are brought forward into a pitch day. Now, you've probably all seen pitch days, been to these events, and they're great innovation theatre, but the purpose of our pitch days is very clear. It's to select those companies that the client wishes to engage with during a 10-week collaboration lab. And then after the pitch day, 5 or so companies are selected, usually 1 company per category, to engage with during the innovation lab. At the onboarding stage, stage 4, appropriate KPIs are set, external mentors assigned, and internal champions for the client are identified to ensure that the startup and the corporate have the best chances of success. And the 10-week collaboration process then runs with various checkpoints and markers throughout. At the end of the 10-week lab, the startups report back. And this isn't a surprise to the corporate because they've been in constant communication throughout the process, but it is a chance to bring in external partners and make a big PR noise. And it's crucially the point at which the corporate and the startup agree next steps, if any. Because of the way we've structured this and the rigor that is put in place, the success rate is very high. So on average, 72% of startups that join an innovation lab go on to form some kind of ongoing engagement with the client. And this can range from a further pilot to a full-scale implementation to a partial or full investment. I'm conscious I ran through that very quickly, but I hope that's given a good idea as to the potential for an open innovation lab and an idea as to how the model works. Next up is the fusion. And as mentioned, this is all about bringing together senior management, frontline staff, and where required, external partners to solve core business challenges and accelerate solutions over a short period of time. This normally takes the following format. The first is the identification of a key challenge that is of strategic importance to the client. We then look to identify those partners that can solve this challenge and shortlist the potential startups, suppliers, and partners to join the fusion. And then we create the cross-functional teams from the client and join them together with selected partners. Then over the course of 3 days, the team will develop a working prototype alongside a commercial plan and business proposal. A rapid implementation plan is developed and potential risks are identified and mapped out. On the final day, teams will present their solution and deliver a plan to the judges. And the successful solution or solutions will then be piloted within a live company within the live company setting following the fusion. The third corporate innovation model is the venture studio. And as mentioned, this is all about creating new ventures or startups on behalf of our clients. Our clients quite often use this model as an alternative to R&D and M&A, and it's particularly impactful for developing and scaling digitally led solutions alongside the core business. The approach combines the best of both, leveraging corporate assets with the speed and agility of startups for an unfair advantage. And as you can see here, the idea is to support our clients develop solutions beyond their core business, focusing on those ideas that are either adjacent and or transformational. Within Venture Studio, business ideas are developed into market-validated and revenue-generating products and services. And as the concepts are designed and developed, they're tested against viability, feasibility, adaptability, and desirability. Taken through the 4-stage Venture Studio process, assumptions and hypotheses are tested and identified. The products or services are created and built. Live experiments with potential customers are conducted, and propositions are iterated. And by the end of Venture Studio, the ideas have been tested to prove product market fit, and revenue is generated through early traction with initial customers. And then finally, our Intra Lab. And this, as I mentioned, is all about entrepreneurship and utilizing the corporate employees to solve the challenges that the business faces. The idea is to explore solutions that take advantage of the opportunities that those on the front line observe and provide them with the tools to develop those solutions. Borrowing from the Google model of 80-20, clients will allow their employees to use 20% of their time, so it's usually a day a week, to focus on developing new solutions for their business, whilst embedding an innovative culture throughout the organization. Employees will learn by doing through a 16-week innovation course on entrepreneurship and commercial validation whilst developing their own business idea. As part of the program, employees engaged in the Intra Lab utilize our Bridge platform to allow them to build a business plan from scratch through completing a series of online modules. And Intra Lab provides the framework to pioneer new ideas while simultaneously developing entrepreneurial minds and skill sets through university class education and a unique experience. So that was a very, very, very quick whistle-top tour of 4 potential options for corporate innovation models for the next generation of corporates, and sort of our assessment on how we do it and our methodology. I appreciate that's a lot of information in a very short space of time. So as a quick recap, we've got the Open Innovation Lab, which is all about supporting clients to discover, develop, and deploy startups into their business to solve core business challenges or opportunities. There's the Fusion model, which solves core challenges and accelerates the implementation of solutions from months or years to days. There's the Venture Studio model, which allows clients to generate new adjacent or transformative business products and services and market validate them. And finally, there's the Intra Lab model, which is all about empowering your employees to create new solutions for the business while simultaneously embedding an innovative culture. Now, I hope you found that useful. And I just wanted to end by citing a favorite quote of mine, which is by Albert Einstein. You can see it here. If you always do what you always did, you will always get what you always got. So that's it from me. Thank you for listening. I put my email address here. It's very simple. It's simon@lmarks.com. So please do feel free to get in touch if you want to talk about any of this. I love this stuff. I can talk about it every day, and I'm happy to talk about it ad nauseum. So yeah, do feel free to get in touch if you'd like. And yeah, thanks for taking the time to listen.
Thank you, Simon. Really good stuff, and we learned about a lot of great innovation models for the next decade. And great having you speak here. Considering the time, we'll take questions offline. Participants, if you have any questions, feel free to drop a question in the chat box. I'll also drop my email ID, and we can take questions offline then.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Simon.
Thanks very much, Ganesh.